So we're on the couch today with Zack Bacle, and I'm Jason Sasaki from Arkansas Elite Welding Academy. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about what to bring on your first day of work. So we know that there's several different jobs and different things we'll need to bring. So let's go ahead and go with starting off a job doing some TIG welding.
Okay. For like my what do I say here? For my job, what I would bring every job that I've been to, this is exactly what I brought. I brought my helmet, obviously, my gloves,
safety, an outlaw hood, right?
Yep.
That's
outlaw
right.
hood, and TIG gloves. And then clippers for your filler rod. That's a major. And then a wire brush, stainless wire brush, because you can either do aluminum or stainless with that. And then a carbon brush, just in case if you're doing carbon, which most likely they're not going to test you on it. And that's not wear your boots for sure. You don't want to get hurt. Like, it's all about safety.
Yeah. So you might want to make sure that you have your tungsten sharpened before you come.
Yeah.
Bring your lunch. Got to have your lunch, because most of the time we got a 30-minute lunch on every job I've ever been on. Basically a 30-minute lunch. That's not enough time to leave, go get something and come back. Most of the time it takes about an hour to get off the plant anyways, you know? So I think whatever the job requires you're gonna have a list. You know, you got your steel-toed boots, all your personal protective gear.
Yeah.
What are some small tools that you like to keep in your bucket that you like to have?
So actually, people usually bring welding bags and all that. What I do, I've actually been made fun of this before and all that, and people have always I actually started a trend where I just have a bucket, a 5-gallon pail, and then I have a lid. I put on it. My welding hood fits exactly in that bucket, and then I have my wire brush, my stainless clippers, and then my gloves, my safety glasses, and that's my tungsten, and that's all I usually bring to my job interviews.
Okay. So I'd like to bring a couple spud wrenches, a big one and a small one. You know, you never know if you're gonna have to do some bolt up or whatever. You might need to take your TIG torch apart. I always recommend having multiple cups. Because you get to a job, you go to the tool shed, and they might not have the cups that you're wanting to weld with. Personally, I change cups out constantly whenever I'm welding. I don't try to do my whole weld out with one cup. I switch them out to make my job easier. I think it makes it easier.
Yeah, and I forgot to also add, I have my little container of all my TIG torch. I can put anything I want. I have everything that I need for a TIG torch
in a little box.
Yep, in a little container, and that is a major part of it, because you weld the way you weld. You are accustomed to your own stuff. A person might use a number 8 cup on something else and you use that on number 8 cup on something different than and you might have a different size cup for that exact thing that you're welding, because you're a different welder.
Yeah, if I'm going to go to a TIG job, I'll have me a little Plano tackle box, and I'll have my cups and sharpened tungsten sharpened on both sides, and have extra gas lenses. I'll have extra buttons. You know, I might even have my an O-ring set, whatever I need to for my TIG torch. I'm gonna make sure that's good. And it's always good, I hope you agree, to invest money into your career, and also, so that means buying tools. You know, when I buy tools, I don't buy cheap tools. I will wait and I will buy a tool that I know is going to last. You know, I buy quality tools, and it's an investment in your life, you know, what you're wanting to do.
You want to put out quality work, well, you got to have quality tools to put out quality work.
Amen. Yeah. I've always said I'd have been half the welder I was if I didn't have the machine that I was running off of. Pipe Pro, baby.
But tools are everything, and so since we're also going into what do we bring to work, what should we go, also how do we present ourselves at work?
Yeah, of course. You know, what do you wear your first day of work?
How do we
So what would you do if your first day of work? You're going to show up, you've got the job, you passed the welding test, you're headed to the job. What are you bringing in hand?
So I think one of the major 3 factors, which is 33% of it, is showing up to work 15 minutes early.
30 minutes early.
30 minutes, 15 minutes early. They always say, you're late if you're on time.
Amen. That's the truth. And for guys that are going on these plant jobs or refineries or anything like that, you've got a long ride from the parking lot to the plant most of the time. You're not just going to get there in 10 minutes. Most of the time you've got a 30-minute walk, you know, so you gotta plan for that. And also during the summertime, you want to be clean, you know, wash your shirts, don't wear the same welding cap every day, be presentable, don't be that stinky guy on the job site, you know, especially when your first day coming out there. You don't want to go out there looking all ragtag, but you don't want to go out there with your ostrich skin boots on either, looking a little prima donna. You want to go out there and just get the job done, you know.
And you always gotta don't tell them tell them what you can do, but don't brag about yourself. Don't be like, oh yeah, I can do this, like nothing. Oh, I can do this. They're gonna be way more likely to hire a humble welder they're gonna be more likely to hire a humble welder that is not like really the best at welding than a cocky welder that is, or like a welder that's full of himself that is amazing at welding.
Exactly. Travis Falk, that's the director of safety at our school, has a saying, and he always says, a good welder with a good attitude will always get hired over a great welder with a bad attitude. Yep. Because you've got to work with those people. So
because the bad welder, or the welder with a bad attitude, he's not going to want to change his habits. He's not going to want to change the way the worker or the employer is going to want him to do the way or make their product the way they want it made. He's going to want to make it the way he wants to make it.
Exactly.
And they don't like that.
Exactly. So now that we talked about the first day of work and what you should have, be presentable, be humble, why don't you give us some tips on your TIG welding? You are the kid that TIGs, so from the get-go, what do you do, and what are some techniques that you like to do that you find are more forgivable in completing your welds?
Okay, so biggest thing, I get a solid 20 to 30 questions a day asking, oh, what's a good tip to start out welding? How do I start out welding? How do I do this and that? I think that if you are passionate enough about it, you are going to no matter what, you're going to find out a way to get into welding. You're going to find a welder. You're going to be able to find a spot to drop that hood down and put your hood time in. No matter what, if you have that passion and you actually want to do it that bad. Because when I started, if I didn't know something, I looked up a YouTube video. If there was no one there to tell me, I just looked up a YouTube video. And most of the time, I don't even listen to them. I just watch exactly what they're doing, and you do exactly that way. But one of the major things is prep. Prep is everything. They TIG weld. When you're TIG welding, your metal's got to be clean. There ain't got to be no uneven gaps, uneven bevels. It's all got to be perfect. Your tungsten has to be perfectly sharp. Your gas flow has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect when you're TIG welding. And if you don't have that, you're just hurting your own self on trying to produce a good weld.
Exactly. It's hard to learn how to do something or to complete the task over and over again if your variables change. Yep. So we always want to have that prep perfect and set up exactly the same. That way you can accomplish the weld over and over and over again and have the same outcome.
Yep. So. And just like you saying, the variables change. When you're TIG welding, it is never the same. Every single weld is different, no matter what. I'll be welding 2-inch for 2 weeks straight, I'm oh, I got this down. Come in the next day, and the 2-inch weld that I just did is junk, because it all changes. It all changes on the day of welding, and you always gotta adapt. You can't just stick to the same thing all the time.
So whenever you're striking your arc and you fire up, what's the first thing that you do under the hood before you add your fill wire?
Okay, so when I strike my arc, you always gotta watch for your puddle. You gotta make sure your puddle is big enough before you even add your filler rod. Because when I first started welding, what I do is I literally try and add my filler rod and there's no puddle there. How are you gonna even weld if there's no puddle there? So you gotta have your puddle, you gotta watch your puddle, make sure it's big enough. Then also, while I'm doing that, you can't keep your filler rod too close to your arc either, because it'll ball it up even if you have it a decent bit a half-inch away. So you got to keep it far, a decent ways away, and then right once your puddle is big enough, you add the filler rod. Once you add the filler rod, you gotta So your pipe is cold when you first start TIG welding. So you obviously gotta like start out slow if you're running lift arc. You're not running pedal because like you can obviously change your amps if you're running pedal. If you're running lift arc, you're running the same exact amps all the time. And your pipe has obviously got to warm up, so you got to go really slow. And then once you start walking, or once your puddle starts forming in there and you start getting your lines, you just watch your puddle the whole time. That's what you got to do. You got to watch your puddle. And what I also have learned is that the bigger the steps, the cooler your puddle is going to be. So if I'm running lift arc, so let's just say I'm on my 2-inch and I'm running lift arc. Well, I usually run my 2-inch at like 70 amps. Well, some days I like to go slower, some days I like to go faster. What I'll do is if I want to go faster, tighter weaves, what I'll do is I'll turn my welder down. Because you're running over that same exact piece of pipe a lot more, that same exact section of the pipe when you're doing tight weaves. So obviously it's going to be a lot warmer. So you got to turn your amps down, obviously. And then when you're running lift arc, to make yourself run a little colder, is you just step farther, go faster.
Do you like running the wider step weaves, or do you like doing a tighter weave?
I like right in the middle. I can do tight weaves and I can do big weaves, but like my dad always says the inspectors don't like the really big weaves, so I'll just do right in the middle because like the Goldilocks of, I don't know, I just call it the Goldilocks of patterns.
So I'm kind of old school. My weaves are real tight for the most part. Sure, I can step them out whenever people want to see them like that, but I've always liked to do a short, tight weave. I want it to look like a caterpillar's belly, underneath it. So I've found that I don't undercut as much, or have to watch really as much whenever I'm doing that tight weave and moving. Plus, I can be a little bit more erratic with my movements, as opposed to if I'm doing those slow, big steps. Everything's got to be symmetrical and look right. Whenever I'm going fast, you can't tell the difference between 1 millimeter and 1.5 millimeter in between them steps. So,
yeah, it makes it easier with your what should I say? So it makes it a lot more symmetrical. A lot easier to make it symmetrical when you're running tighter weaves.
Of course, yeah.
But what else?
So what about your tungsten stick out? So what do you do to judge how far you want to stick your tungsten out? Does that determine on the size of the pipe that you're running, or?
So what I do, so when I'm running my normal weaves, if I'm not doing tight weaves, if I'm not doing really big weaves, or I'm not running a root or anything like that, and I'm just walking on a cover pass, I keep my tungsten about the distance of how big my cup is out, plus a little bit more, like a couple more millimeters out than that.
So the distance from the sides of your cup.
Yep. And then a little bit farther than that.
And probably like a 30-second further than that.
Because it's directing towards that direction, so it doesn't really matter. That's how I usually base it off of. But if I'm doing really tight weaves, I'll have my tungsten in there a lot more because you can just run back and forth. But also, like, when you stick your tungsten out really far, you get that really good gas coverage, but it's also a lot harder to control your puddle because your tungsten's way out there.
And your arc cone is changing when you're up.
Yep, exactly.
So what about sharpening your tungsten? What type of angle do you like on your tungsten when you sharpen yours?
I like the really
laid back and long, drawn sharp tip.
I really like the long tip tungsten, mostly because I don't know. I just that really short
short
bevel
on there
the tungsten. It doesn't really stretch the puddle out as much as I want it to.
Yeah, and also when you dab the little wire on there, it's done.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like the long stuff, like if you dab it, it'll dull it a little bit. You can still run a little bit.
Maybe longer, a little bit, depending. Yeah.
But it.
Oh, what about this? So you do mostly stainless, correct?
Yeah.
So do you like a 332 tungsten or a 1/8 tungsten? Or 16?
All I use is 332.
332 tungsten.
332, and then mostly, obviously, what I use is 332 filler rod on all my. Because all I weld is at work. All I weld is 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch. Like I look forward to the days I'm welding 6-inch and 8-inch. I love welding that big stuff. Even though it's Schedule 10, I still love welding the big stuff.
Now, do you also have any preference on TIG torches? Do you like not brand names, but on sizes? Do you like a 200? Do you like a 150?
I use a 150 mostly because the most amps I'm running, like at least once a week, is 115 amps.
Yeah.
So I run a 150 flex head. That's what I do.
All right. Well, Zach, I had a great time with you today, and I actually learned a couple tips about you. So I appreciate that, man, and hope you have a good time here with us today. Outlaw Welding Worldwide, and while we're sitting here on the couch.
Yep.